Our next speaker is Hunter, who is currently a graduate student at Marshall University. Hunter serves as a graduate assistant within the Marshall's LGBTQ plus office, volunteers for the alt rock DJs for MU's radio station. He has a bachelor's degree in international affairs with minors in film studies and Japanese language from Marshall University, where his capstone concerned gender and sexuality politics within the game League of Legends, previously presented at the Professional Wrestling Studies Association WrestlePosium, discussing LGBTQ plus representation in mainstream professional wrestling. And he streams on Twitch under the name Hunter Ghostal. So,
Hi there.
hi.
That was a good intro. I don't know how to follow up that besides with a presentation. So what I'm going to be talking to you today, I would like to ask you all, are you getting enough oxygen? Maybe you can't respond right now, but that is the question frequently asked on Space Ghost Coast to Coast. Space Ghost Coast to Coast is kind of the introduction to modernist, like, Dadaism, absurd comedy. People may not think of it that much today. It was a show that went from 1994 to 2004, so it may not be as like prevalent nowadays, but it did introduce a lot of ideas that are still used by television shows today. It definitely is not the first adult cartoon. Things like The Simpsons, etc., existed previously, but it is influential in the way it has shaped comedy nowadays. So maybe the question for you all is, why should I care about Space Ghost Coast to Coast? Why should it matter? Well, thanks to Space Ghost Coast to Coast, we are able to have this block that we're speaking at today concerning Cartoon Network and Adult Swim, because it was the grandfather creator of both of those networks. Cartoon Network was previously showing television shows before Space Ghost to Coast to Coast. However, it was primarily showing obtained Hanna-Barbera animation. How Space Ghost Coast to Coast began is workers in the programming department, Andy Merrill, Khaki Jones, and Mike Lazo, were looking for something special to do for a Space Ghost programming block. They would do weekly special programming blocks for shows such as Johnny Quest. And for Space Ghost, they wanted to do something special, not just a marathon. They wanted to do an original show. And that's kind of where the idea for Space Ghost went. The network heads at Cartoon Network were asking Mike Lazo for an adult-oriented show that they could use. They came up with the idea, hey, what if we have this cartoon superhero interviewing real-life celebrities? And that's where it went. Andy Merrill was the one who came up with the idea, Space Ghost Coast to Coast. Rhymes, it's catchy, it hits. The original pilot was around 2.5 minutes, and it actually had Gary Owens as the voice for Space Ghost. He was the original voicer of Space Ghost, in which he was interviewing Denzel Washington. It was a very over-the-top kind of Hollywood production interview show, which was kind of the direction they went later. But originally they reworked it into Space Ghost Coast to Coast, having Zorak as the band leader, Moltar as the director, former Space Ghost villains in those roles. They did originally have celebrities that they did want to put in those roles. Those fell through, so they said, hey, why don't we just continue with the low-budget animation process. So some of you may have never seen Space Ghost Coast to Coast before. What characteristics did Space Ghost have? In the Friday, October 6th, 1995 edition of the Tampa Tribune, George Lowe was interviewed. George Lowe described Space Ghost saying, Space Ghost is easily distracted by Zorak or Moltar or even hunger pains, just about anything. He can't stay on topic, he's easily bored, but sometimes he gets in his zingers. The format of Space Ghost became that he was this oafish, unaware host. He didn't really get who the celebrities were. He didn't know. He didn't really care. Chad is saying a bit like Stephen Colbert. Yes, a lot like Stephen Colbert, Jon Stewart, etc., etc. These people who are doing interviews in which they have these big personalities and they don't really know, nor do they care who they are. So George Lowe said of his characterization of Space Ghost, I play him as the clueless guy at the party who doesn't quite get the joke. And when asked how he can get away with putting Space Ghost this way, he said, my reactions come after the interview so I can get away with being nasty or sarcastic. The show was an interview show in which the interviews would take place because it was under Turner. They were able to use studios at CNN to interview celebrities. It would typically be one of the producers, sometimes the producer would even put on a Space Ghost suit, interviewing a celebrity. And then they would take that interview, chop it up, make a script around it, figure out a way to put a show around it. Chad is also saying Zach Galifianakis on Between Two Ferns. Yes, that is very much influenced by Space Ghost. You can see in the way that he's unaware, etc., etc., etc. He's very much taking characteristics of how Space Ghost was acted out on the TV show. Again, how did this show start out? It first aired April 15th, 1994. And the first episode that aired was entitled Spanish Translation, although that was not the first produced episode. First produced episode was Elevator. If you watch it on the DVD or even HBO Max, which you can watch all of the shows, I'm pretty sure, that are discussed today on HBO Max. If you watch it on there, it is out of production order. You can kind of see how crunchy Elevator is. So Andy Merrill, Khaki Jones, and Mike Lazo were all in the programming department. And it was said during the mornings, before lunch, they would work. They would do the scheduling for shows, aka they would just put together programming blocks of old Hanna-Barbera cartoons, Looney Tunes, etc., etc. And then during the afternoons after lunch, they would work on Space Ghost. It was said even early what they would be doing, the editors would cut the footage actually in a tape storage closet. Somebody would have to stand in there and cut the footage, and then somebody else would have to stand outside and make sure other people weren't walking in while they were doing editing. So the original format was very interviewey. They would throw out some jokes here and there. Example, they would do theme shows for people. Gilligan's Island was a theme show. Batman was a themed episode. And they would kind of have themes where they would ask questions, but then they'd throw in like dumb jokes here and there. As the show progressed, it kind of went into its absurdist format that it's now known for today. Published originally in the September 1996 issue of TV Broadcast Production Magazine, there was an interview with Dave Willis, an associate producer of the show. He explained Space Ghost Coast to Coast as, it's kind of a weird thing. It kind of debunks a lot of celebrity and it's kind of absurd. We work a script until we're happy with it. Bizarre is always cool. We want to be funny and we don't want to spoof other people. We want this to be an individual original show. One of, at least from my perspective, one of the first actual original crazy how am I watching this on television episodes of the show is entitled Storybook House. They went to Canada and got a public access television host, Kirk the Storyteller, and had him, alongside someone named Carl the Cartoonist, actually retell episodes of Space Ghost Coast to Coast while the cartoonist would draw them. So the entire episode was a rehash of two previous episodes with an older gentleman just reading out the script, and the episode is being drawn. This was kind of the first foray in this kind of absurdist thing. However, what the producers, the workers on the show, credit for the first episode of this absurdity is the episode Fire Drill. The episode Fire Drill, they are interviewing um, Donny Osmond, and it kind of just goes off the rails. Actually, on the commentary for the episode on the DVD, they describe it as Dadaism, which for anybody who is into art communities, into animation, kind of, Dadaism is kind of like it's a style in which something is happening for almost no reason. There's no rhyme or reason, no thought process behind it. It just happens. And they introduce the episode in a very funny manner of they just take a recording of George Lowe, voice actor for Space Ghost, and edit it into the episode. The entire thing is he's asking if he would get more or less business if, as my Christmas gift, I made up to like 500 coffee mugs that say Mr. Beefy. And then they argue about it. He says, gee, that's funny because I sent 3 baskets here to the Cartoon Network, which everybody gobbled up and I never got thank you note 1 for. I sent these immense, gargantuan, disgustingly overloaded baskets. And he's just complaining about the show. They edit this into the final product of the show. And then we see this again happen with C. Martin Croker, an instrumental person with the show, in the episode Sleeper, which featured Slash and Hulk Hogan. After the commercial break, Moltar is edited in, just talking about rules for skating rinks, saying originally they used to say couples skate next, 2 girls may not skate together, and then a couple years later they'd say couples skate, 2 girls may not skate together, 2 boys may not skate together, but they'd say it like who'd have figured 2 boys may not skate together. This was kind of the absurd, but they would take in edited in words of the person in the production booth just cutting up, and then put it into the finalized episode as a like ha 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 thing that happened. Space Ghost kind of became known as that they were putting whatever they wanted to on TV. It may not have made sense. It may not have been the production friendly thing to do, but they would put whatever on there. One of the later episodes that can be seen with is an episode entitled Brilliant Number 1, in which the episode takes a turn, turns black and white, has a background humming. The introduction music, instead of the standard Space Ghost introduction, is Ramenstein's song. If any Ramenstein fans are here, or anyone who speaks German, I'm very sorry, but I'm going to butcher this. It is titled Wollt ihr das Bett in Flammen sehen? ? They played that instead of the regular intro, and then throughout the episode they had captioned at the bottom of the screen various William Shakespeare quotes that would not match up to anything being said on screen. Space Ghost would insert various subtle meta jokes like that into the series. You can see that more in comedy nowadays. At the time, meta jokes weren't very much prevalent. Behind the scenes jokes could also be seen as in the same season as Brilliant Number 1 in episodes Pavement and Joshua. Pavement and Joshua both were created, according to Andy Merrill, writer for the show. He said the writer room would either write for 20 minutes or write 2 pages of the script and then pass the script to the right. And then the next writer would not be allowed to make any edits of the script. They would have to just go on what was already previously written. Pavement was credited to Space Ghost. It was said that Space Ghost wrote the show. They kind of put into the episode a reason to write band Pavement into the show. They never said Pavement by name. They introduced them as the Beatles. But the producers wanted to work with them. They needed a reason, so the reason was Space Ghost wrote the show and needed the Beatles to be the musical guests. They even wrote jokes into Pavement, such as Space Ghost after the break saying, "Welcome back, stupid viewers. You'll watch anything. Go ahead, change the channel. You'll be back." making fun of the viewers who are watching the show. The other episode in which the pass the script to the right happened was with Joshua, which was edited in the case of like an introduction video, like you would go to a first day at work and be introduced to something. And the whole idea was branding Space Ghost to go towards your brand. It was, they did this meta joke in which throughout the episode it's different ways Space Ghost can go alongside your brand, and then at the very end it is tied to an in real life contest that happened alongside Space Ghost, a World Haiku write-in contest in which people wrote a haiku about Space Ghost and then got to be featured in the episode. They kind of bait and switched them. They came to Atlanta, Georgia, where Cartoon Network headquarters were, recorded an interview with them, and then gave them 45 seconds of an episode to read their haikus, in which Raya Rosenberg's was, "I'll level with you. Let me on your show. I want a day off from school." Sean Medlock, the second person's, was, "I hope I don't win. The rules say to bring a friend. I don't have any." So these people did this contest to get onto an episode of Space Ghost. One got their 45 seconds of fame. There were a lot of interviews, as said previous, that were chopped and skewed to go alongside a script. They would even do this with good interviews, such as Joshua. They just inserted a bunch of interviews with stars such as Tony Bennett, Tom Arnold, which older people may know him. Like, I don't know if the younger people know Tom Arnold. But they had huge names, and they just put them in, like, 1-second blurbs. One of the people that this happened with was Tyra Banks. Actually, at the Cartoon Network panel at DragonCon 99 in Atlanta, Georgia, Pete Smith, one of the writers for the show, said about Tyra Banks, "She was great. Actually, I was the one who interviewed Tyra Banks. She was great. She was smart, very it was too good of an interview. She was really pleasant, really upbeat. There was nothing funny about it. It would have been a great Oprah interview. It just wasn't good for us at all, so we just shut her up." She was end up being used on an episode entitled Chinatown, in which every time she attempted to speak, Space Ghost would interrupt her and go off topic. Space Ghost at one point says, "Why don't you sit still as I capture your essence in colored pencil?" And just for a minute or so sits in silence as he's drawing her on a pad, brings up the picture. It is very South Carolina beach caricature photo of Tyra Banks. This is kind of the jokes that were being made. As it went on and on, you could kind of see Space Ghost being a show in which they knew their audience and they knew what they could get away with, and what they could get away with was kind of more so than any of the other shows that were happening at the time. One of the episodes in 1998 entitled Warren ended up being a half-hour episode. Space Ghost episodes are typically 11 minutes. It was a half hour because they just repeated the same episode 3 times live on air in a row. It would end with Space Ghost saying, "That was good, what else is on?" The announcer on the television would say, "And now back to the Warren Show." Repeated. Fire Ant is a huge one that Space Ghost is remembered for. It was a 22-minute episode in which for the first 11 minutes he interviews Conan O'Brien. Space Ghost gets bitten by an ant, and then proceeding for the next 11 minutes live on air on Cartoon Network, follows an ant very slowly with little to no audio. During this 11-minute, all he says is, "Ants are stupid. I'm going to so kill you. This time tomorrow you'll be dead. You down with that? Because it's going to happen." You can see this kind of absurdity happen until the end of Space Ghost's run. The last episode aired was Live at the Fillmore, or as it was called whenever it was promoted, Unfinished POS, which POS standing for piece of shit. It aired for the 10th anniversary of Space Ghost, was an unfinished episode. A lot of it was not animated. There was no original interview. They reused the Susan Powder episode from the first episode of Space Ghost, the Spanish translation episode, and then later just interviewed the show itself. The end of the episode used another episode's credit sequence, the credit sequence for Old Kentucky Nightmare. And it was an unfinished episode that they put live on air. So Space Ghost kind of ended going alongside this absurdist comedy idea. Space Ghost, with its absurdist comedy and its Dadaism, all that influenced comedy today that you can see on shows such as Eric Andre's show. If anybody's seen the Z-Way show, that's on Showtime. Very much like that. As said previously, Zach Galifianakis, Between Two Ferns, Stephen Colbert. You can see it on so many of the comedy interview genre nowadays. In these people being absurd to the guests and the joke being the reaction that the guests give to it. However, it did also influence modern Cartoon Network. Actually premiered on Space Ghost Coast to Coast, which people may not realize. The first annual world premiere tune-in simulcast on TBS TNT Cartoon Network on February 20th, 1995, which is why its alternate name for the episode is President's Day Nightmare, because it was on President's Day. But that was the premiere of Dexter's Laboratory, the first introduction of that. Johnny Bravo. And the Powerpuff Girls aired in its full. They did not know how to choose which show aired simulcast on all networks, so Villain Lokar says, since it's a tie, you must have a tiebreaker, and Space Ghost says, no, since it's a tie, we'll have a swimsuit competition. That's how they figure it out. In true format of Space Ghost Coast to Coast. Space Ghost Coast to Coast influenced Cartoon Network, then it influenced the later Adult Swim programming block. In 2000, Cartoon Network premiered stealth pilots for Space Ghost spin-off show, The Brack Show, which was originally entitled Leave It to Brack. They didn't stay with that. Because I think Leave It to Beaver's people had words with them. As well as shows such as C-Lab 2021, Harvey Birdman, Attorney at Law, and Aqua Teen Hunger Force, all of which were created by people who had previously worked on Space Ghost Coast to Coast. September 2nd, 2001 was the official start of Adult Swim, and Space Ghost Coast to Coast was one of the original shows that premiered on there. It made its transition from Cartoon Network to the Adult Swim block officially on that date. Previously, it would just air late on Cartoon Network, then it went to Adult Swim, where it could finally curse if it wanted to, which is something they always wanted to do. So an even bigger influence, which people may not realize, is 2003, they aired an episode called Baffler Meal, which was originally going to be a backdoor pilot for the Aqua Teen Hunger Force show. It originally wasn't allowed to air in 1999 or 2000 because they said it had too much of a focus on the Aqua Teens, but it aired at a later date, just as a nod to how Aqua Teen Hunger Force started. So, as said throughout the presentation, why should you care about Space Ghost Coast to Coast? Without Space Ghost Coast to Coast, Cartoon Network itself wouldn't be what it is today. Adult Swim would not be as it is today. Kind of the interview comedy genre as it is today would not be the same. And a lot of other animation, absurdist comedy shows would not be the same either. I hope you all learned something from this. I hope it was very informative, and if not, I hope that my voice at least soothed you a little bit. I'll be here for Q&A later, but if there's any questions, I'll check the chat. Thank you so much for your time. Godspeed, God bless.
Thank you. I think I learned that I'm old.
I'm old because
I remember I was in my 20s when all of that started. So.
Oh really?
Yes.
I was gonna say it's very nostalgic for me because I would as a kid stay up very late just to watch it. It was so I was young. I didn't understand it back at the time, but now I watch it as an adult. I'm like, oh, that's funny.
Yeah.